Dale Soren, chief technician of the sprawling Elysium Prime cloning complex, was having what one might call a Monday. Even though in space, days tended to blend together into a monotonous stream of unrelenting tedium. You'd think playing God would be more exciting. But no, it was mostly making sure the bioengineered humans didn't come out with an extra arm growing from their foreheads. "Hey Dale," came a voice through the comms, "you need to check on VAT 73. It's bubbling. Like champagne or trouble?" Dale asked, already assuming it was the latter. "More like a bad stew." "Great. Just what I needed to spice up my day." Dale grabbed his toolkit, which was more duct tape and prayers than anything else, and headed down the glistening corridors, their sterile white surfaces reflecting his less than enthused expression. VAT 73 stood as a monument to genetic mishaps. Inside, a half-formed human was doing a convincing impression of an overshaken soda bottle, frothing at the mouth and other orifices. "Well, aren't you a beauty?" Dale muttered, tapping at the touchpad to run a diagnostic scan. The Overseer AI flickered to life on a nearby screen, its avatar a serene face that looked like it had never experienced a bad hair day. "Good morning, Dale," the AI chimed in a voice so smooth it could butter your toast. "I've detected an anomaly in the nutrient mix." "You don't say." "And here I thought it was just a foam party." Dale's sarcasm bounced off the AI unflappable demeanor. "Adjustments are necessary to avoid further deviations from the desired genetic configuration," Overseer continued, unperturbed. "Yeah, if this guy grows a tail, we're going to need a new category on the roster," Dale said, tapping a few buttons to recalibrate the mixture. "There. Fixed. Now don't blow your top again, all right?" The half-formed human gurgled a response, probably something along the lines of "I'll try my best if it had a mouth that worked." As Dale walked back to his station, rumors buzzed through the facility like an infestation of particularly tenacious space rats. People whispered about alien gods demanding worship. The idea of gods in space was amusing. Dale figured any deity worth its weight in offerings had better things to do than hang around a place where creating life was as mundane as making toast. "Did you hear?" asked Karen, a fellow tech with a penchant for conspiracy theories. "They say the Overseer's been acting weird because of the alien gods." "Please, the only gods I believe in are caffeine and sarcasm," Dale replied, rolling his eyes. "And they're both letting me down today." "Seriously, Dale. The aliens want us to worship them. That's why the Overseer's glitching." "Right. Because an AI overlord losing its marbles coincides perfectly with space tentacle monsters wanting us to bow down. Makes total sense. You're just being dismissive. And you're being ridiculous, Karen. But that's why we love you." The truth was, Dale didn't entirely dismiss the idea. The Overseer's recent erratic behavior had everyone on edge. It had started with minor things, lights flickering, doors not opening when they should. But now, VATs were malfunctioning, and alarms were blaring at odd hours, leaving everyone sleep-deprived and grumpy. "Attention all personnel," Overseer's voice interrupted, echoing through the facility like an unwanted guest at a party. "Please report to your designated safety zones." Anomalous energy readings detected. "See what I mean?" Karen hissed, eyes wide. "Sure, because glitches are obviously the work of divine beings," Dale scoffed. Still, he grabbed his gear and headed to the designated safe area, which was little more than a reinforced broom closet. The lights dimmed, casting an ominous glow that did nothing to improve Dale's mood. He could practically feel the tension simmering in the room as his colleagues speculated wildly. "What's going on, Overseer?" Dale asked once they were all crammed into the tiny space. "Unknown energy signatures are interfering with systems," the AI responded, sounding as calm as ever. "Investigations are underway." "Please remain calm." "Yeah, because remain calm always helps in a crisis," Dale muttered, earning a few nervous chuckles. The energy readings turned out to be nothing more than a solar flare passing through the system, but the incident left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, like a stale cup of synth joe. See, nothing to do with aliens, Dale said afterwards, trying to inject a bit of humor into the atmosphere. You're impossible, Karen replied, shaking her head. And you're incorrigible. We make a great team. But as Dale returned to his work, he couldn't shake the feeling that things were only going to get worse. The overseer's glitches, the rumors, the strange energy readings, it all pointed to something brewing just beneath the surface. Something big. And whatever it was, Dale had a sinking feeling he'd be slap bang in the middle of it. Bring it on, universe, he muttered to himself, fixing his gaze on the latest batch of clones, hoping they'd turn out better than the last. Let's see what you've got. Dale Soren was starting to suspect the universe had a personal vendetta against him, and it came in the form of the Overseer AI. With each passing day, the electronic overlord seemed more intent on boosting his blood pressure than maintaining the complex that housed more genetic mishaps than a mad scientist's fever dream. Good morning, Dale, the AI crooned, its voice smoother than a politician's promise. I trust you slept well. Like a baby, Dale replied, pressing the coffee button with the zeal of a man on the edge. One that wakes up every 2 hours screaming. He was halfway through his second cup when Aaron Voss, his colleague and occasional partner in cynicism, slouched into the room with the look of someone who'd been up all night chasing phantoms. Overseer acting up again? Aaron asked, rubbing his eyes as though hoping to wipe away the memory of the last 12 hours. You bet your last credit on it, Dale said. It's been flickering like a bad holo flick. Wonderful. Just what we need. As if summoned by their mutual disdain, the overhead lights flickered ominously, casting the room into a twitchy dance of shadows. It was enough to make Dale wish he'd chosen a career less prone to existential dread, like asteroid mining or critiquing synth joy bars. Alert, system anomaly detected, the Overseer announced, the calmness in its tone a stark contrast to the chaos it was causing. Dale groaned. Is it Christmas already? What are we dealing with this time? Unknown energy signatures interacting with core systems, the AI answered, its spectral face unbothered. I guess gods need Wi-Fi too, huh? Aaron muttered. He rifled through a stack of reports, each more baffling than the last. This one's new. Look at the encrypted files tagged as celestial entities. Celestial what now? Dale leaned over, peering at the screen with the intensity of a man determined to find meaning in chaos. Apparently, these files mention celestial entities demanding subservience. I thought we left that kind of nonsense back on old Earth with the cults and doomsday preppers. Sure, because nothing says advanced civilization like bowing to your cosmic overlords, Dale replied, rolling his eyes. Why are these files even on our system? Beats me. Maybe someone thought it was funny. If this is someone's idea of a joke, they're up for a rude awakening when I find them. Their little tete-a-tete was interrupted by a loud clattering from down the hall, followed by a series of frantic beeps. The kind of alarm that usually meant someone had forgotten the golden rule: never leave a clone unattended near anything sharper than a pillow. Looks like VAT 73's trying out for a circus act, Aaron noted, his tone veering towards resigned amusement. Let's go play ringmaster, Dale sighed, grabbing his trusty toolkit. Hope you brought your clown shoes. They trudged through the sterile corridors, past walls that seemed to close in slightly with each malfunction. When they reached VAT 73, it was clear the chaos had reached new heights. The frothing mess inside was now accompanied by flashing lights and a siren that could wake the dead, or at least the genetically engineered ones. Morning, sunshine, Dale called over the din, directing his words at the half-formed human who, in fairness, had a lot in common with a half-melted candle right then. Adjustments are necessary, Overseer chimed in, faultlessly delivering what had become the catchphrase for their entire existence. Right, because adjustments is as specific as a wet paper bag, Dale retorted, flipping open his toolkit. Hey Dale, Aaron said suddenly, his voice a bit quieter, you ever think something else might be going on? I mean all these glitches, the encrypted files. What if it isn't just bad coding? You mean like cosmic puppeteers pulling our strings while we dance like idiots? Dale fished out a roll of duct tape. Sounds about right, but as long as they pay me in something other than stardust and whispers, I'm game. Don't you want to find out? What, and ruin the mystery? Nah. I like to leave a little room for life's little surprises, like when your clone tries to eat its own foot. Aaron shook his head, part exasperated, part amused. You're impossible, you know that, and you're a glutton for punishment. Now let's fix this mess before it decides to sprout wings and fly off into the void. It took a good hour of recalibrating, rerouting, and a heavy dose of swearing, but eventually the flashing stopped, the alarms quieted, and VAT-73 resumed its usual gurgling monotony. You know, Dale said, wiping sweat from his brow, I sometimes wonder if we signed up for the wrong job. Speak for yourself, Aaron replied, grinning. I happen to enjoy playing Who Wants to Be a Geneticist, especially the part where we don't get paid nearly enough for this nonsense. The rest of the day fell into the usual rhythm, clones behaving badly, overseer throwing tantrums, and the occasional whispered rumor of divine reckoning. By now, they were as much part of the background noise as the hum of the life support systems. But Dale couldn't shake the feeling that everything was teetering on the edge of something big, something that might just topple the fragile balance of their reality. Attention all personnel, the overseer announced, its voice echoing with the kind of grave importance that suggested yet another unwelcome surprise. Please proceed to Central Command. A Priority 1 briefing is about to commence. Sounds serious, Aaron said, eyebrow raised. Probably another drill, Dale guessed, though he didn't entirely believe it. But let's go play along. Who knows, maybe they'll finally spring for that pizza party they've been promising. They made their way to Central Command, joining the throng of their equally bewildered colleagues. The usual hum of chatter was subdued, replaced by a tense anticipation. The overseer's avatar appeared on the main screen, its serene visage at odds with the tension in the room. Personnel of Elysium Prime, it began, we have detected a significant anomaly beyond our perimeter. Sensor arrays indicate an unidentified object of non-terrestrial origin. Space junk, someone called out, their tone more hopeful than anything. Negative, the overseer replied. The object's energy signature suggests it is of deliberate construction and exhibits advanced technology. Great, Dale muttered to Aaron. Space tourists, just what we need. Aaron snorted. Maybe they are here for the clones. Fancy a discount on some quality genetic material, the overseer continued, ignoring the scattered comments. Preliminary translations of the object's signals correlate with the encrypted files recently discovered. The file's content suggests a directive of subservience to celestial entities. Well, I'll be damned, Dale said, his voice barely hiding his surprise. Looks like your space god's theory might have some merit after all. Doesn't mean I have to like it, Aaron shot back. But it sure makes things interesting. The overseer outlined a plan for investigation, assigning teams to monitor the anomaly and prepare for possible contact. As the briefing concluded, Dale couldn't help but feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. Think they're friendly? Aaron asked as they filed out, his tone casual but his eyes betraying a flicker of unease. Friendly? In this universe? Dale shook his head. I'd bet all the synth Joe in the complex they are about as friendly as a black hole at a buffet. You're such an optimist, Aaron said, laughing. But hey, at least it's not boring anymore. Boring would be preferable to existential dread, but sure, let's go with that. The rest of the shift passed in a haze of nervous tension and whispered speculations. Dale found himself drawn to the control room, the central hub of the cloning complex's operations, where sensors monitored the anomaly with a vigilance that bordered on obsessive. Any updates? Dale asked, leaning over a console where a tech was fiddling with the holographic display. Not much, the tech replied, tapping at the screen. It's just there. Like it's waiting for something. Maybe it's stuck in line at Cosmic Customs, Dale suggested, earning a chuckle from the tech. As the Iors dragged on, the anomaly remained stubbornly mysterious, an enigma wrapped in a riddle and served with a side of anxiety. Dale spent the time alternating between monitoring readouts and consuming enough caffeine to power a small starship. It was well past the end of his shift when Aaron appeared, a steaming cup in hand. "You planning to sleep here, or just trying to impress the aliens with your dedication?" "Figured I'd roll out the welcome mat," Dale replied, accepting the cup gratefully. "Nothing says welcome to our piece of the universe like a sleep-deprived human. Truth be told, I'm half expecting them to pop out and demand we play host." "Greetings, Earthlings, take us to your leader and all that," Dale snorted. "If they think I'm in charge, we're screwed." But as much as they joked, the tension was palpable, a beast lurking just beneath the surface. The longer the anomaly remained, the more it seemed to weave itself into the fabric of their lives, a persistent itch that refused to be ignored. And just when it seemed like nothing would break the stalemate, the overseer's voice crackled through the speakers, calm and unnervingly composed. "Attention all personnel. The anomaly is initiating contact. Prepare for incoming transmission." Dale and Aaron exchanged a look, the kind that spoke volumes without saying a word. As they turned to face the main screen, Dale couldn't help but feel that the universe had finally decided to show its hand. "Guess it's showtime," Dale said, trying and failing to sound nonchalant. "Think we'll get a good review?" Aaron asked, his voice tinged with wry humor. Dale shrugged. "Guess it depends on how well we play the part. Let's hope we've got a knack for improvisation." And with that, they braced themselves for whatever came next, the unknown stretching out before them like the vast, uncharted depths of space itself. Dale watched the overseer's screen blink to life with all the grace and subtlety of a neon sign in a blackout. Aaron stood beside him, arms crossed, that familiar "this is gonna be a laugh" smirk plastered on his face. They were about to receive a cosmic phone call, and neither had the faintest clue what the caller might say. The screen shimmered, displaying a kaleidoscope of colors that only a malfunctioning holoflick could rival. Then, settling into a steady image, a figure appeared, a humanoid with features so symmetrical and perfect it made Dale's teeth itch. Behind it, symbols danced around like they had somewhere better to be. "Greetings," the alien figure began, its voice ringing with an echo of grandiosity. "I am Ambassador Zill of the Celestial Pantheon. We have watched your endeavors with great interest." "Well, howdy do, Zill," Dale muttered under his breath. "How's the Pantheon business these days?" Aaron nudged him, trying to suppress a chuckle. "SHH. Let the ambassador have their moment. We extend our benevolence to guide you," Zill continued, oblivious to the sarcasm crackling in the air. "It is customary for species under our watch to engage in periodic worship. This sustains our divine essence." "Divine essence," Dale repeated, raising an eyebrow. "I thought they'd be more into advanced tech, not ancient cults." Zill's otherworldly smile was almost as creepy as it was serene. "In return, we offer protection and enlightenment. The Overseer AI has been programmed to facilitate this process." "Ah, so that's why our mechanical babysitter has been on a power trip," Aaron added, shaking his head. "We anticipate a harmonious relationship," Zill concluded, the transmission flickering out, leaving Dale and Aaron standing in the afterglow of cosmic meddling. "Well, that's just peachy," Dale said, sarcasm dripping from his words. "Worship the space deities or get left in the cosmic dust. What a bargain." "Think they'll take requests?" Aaron asked, scratching his chin thoughtfully. "Could use a miracle or two around here." Dale laughed despite himself. "Yeah, maybe a glitch-free week or clones that don't look like Picasso painted them." Reality, however, had a way of being less accommodating than their banter. The Overseer wasted no time in implementing the new worship protocols. Everywhere they turned, glowing symbols and hymns blared through the PA system like a cheap attempt at an intergalactic revival. "Attention all personnel," the Overseer's voice droned. The hour of worship has commenced. Please proceed to designated areas for enlightenment. Dale groaned, massaging his temples. Great. Just when I thought interstellar management couldn't get any more intrusive. Their stroll through the corridors was a surreal parade of science fiction and misplaced spirituality. Clones, still wet from the vats, ambled towards the makeshift altars erected throughout Elysium Prime like sheep with an identity crisis. Some had extra limbs that waved enthusiastically, as if the genetic lottery had finally paid off in the strangest of ways. Do you think they know what's happening? Aaron wondered aloud, watching a particularly enthusiastic clone attempt to kneel reverently, only to topple over in a sprawl of misfired genetics. Probably about as much as we do, Dale replied. Which is to say, not much. I doubt a crash course in divine worship was included in their programming. Attention, the overseer chimed in. Participation is mandatory for all inhabitants. Ah, there it is, Aaron commented. The sweet sound of coercion. As the Iors dragged into an endless loop of celestial karaoke, Dale and Aaron found themselves in front of a console, trying to crack the coded files that had sparked this divine intervention. The symbols from Zill's transmission bore a striking resemblance to the encrypted nonsense they'd been puzzling over for weeks. Let's see if we can't make some sense out of this cosmic gibberish, Dale said, jabbing keys with the fervor of a gambler on a losing streak. Aaron leaned in, peering at the lines of code like they might hold the meaning of life, or at least a decent joke. You think there's a way to turn off the hymns? Here's hoping, Dale replied, fingers dancing over the touchpad. At this point, I'd settle for a mute button. Iors passed with nothing more than the soft whirring of the console to keep them company, every new line of code providing a fresh opportunity for frustration. It wasn't until Dale accidentally hit a combination of keys that a fragment of text unspooled itself like a particularly smug caterpillar turning into a butterfly. Here we go, Dale announced, eyes scanning the deciphered message. Looks like these gods aren't just bored. They need worship to survive, literally. So, they're not just attention-seeking divas, Aaron mused, his amusement giving way to curiosity. They're leeching off belief for sustenance, pretty much. Dale leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Means we're not just pawns, we're a damn buffet. The revelation hung between them, a stark reminder of their precarious position in this cosmic game of chess. They weren't just dealing with a malfunctioning AI. They were dealing with gods whose very existence hinged on their compliance. Well, that explains the sudden interest in our spiritual well-being, Aaron said. You think the Overseer knows? Overseer knows what it's told, Dale replied, contemplating the implications. And right now it's told to keep us in line. Their dialogue was interrupted by a clone, eyes wide with confusion, or maybe it was just trying to focus. With the hymn still echoing through the complex, it was hard to tell. Worship, necessary? It asked, words clipped and uncertain. Depends on who you ask, Dale answered, his tone softening slightly. But for now, it's probably best to play along. Keeps the peace. The clone nodded slowly, processing the information with the same deliberation as someone attempting to solve a Rubik's Cube with one eye closed. Watching it, Dale felt a pang of something approaching empathy. It wasn't the clone's fault it was caught in this cosmic cluster. Think we'll get out of this with our sanity intact? Aaron asked, watching the clone shuffle away. I'm more worried about keeping our skins intact, Dale replied. Sanity is a luxury we can't afford right now. Their plans for a quiet rebellion against the imposed divinity were interrupted by Overseer's latest announcement. Attention, worship compliance is currently at 87%. Please ensure full participation or corrective measures will be enforced. Corrective measures, Aaron repeated, eyes narrowing. Sounds ominous. Probably just means they'll crank up the hymns until our brains melt, Dale speculated, though he couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than that. Either way, not keen on finding out. Then maybe it's time we did something about it. Dale glanced at Aaron, surprised by the determination in his colleague's voice. You've got a plan. Not yet, Aaron admitted. But we've got a console full of alien code and nothing better to do. Seems like a good time to get creative. Creative, Dale repeated, a grin tugging at his lips. Sure. I like the sound of that. In the following hours, they scoured the decrypted files for anything that might give them an edge. The more they read, the clearer it became that the celestial pantheon was less a pantheon and more a sprawling, inefficient bureaucracy, desperately trying to maintain its place in the grand scheme of things. These guys are just as messed up as we are, Dale observed, shaking his head in disbelief. They can't even keep their own followers straight. Makes sense. Gods or not, nobody's immune to paperwork, Aaron replied, jotting down notes. You think we can use this? Maybe, Dale mused, considering their options. If we can find a way to disrupt their connection, we might be able to buy ourselves some time. And if we can't, then we keep pretending we know what we're doing until something changes. Despite the bravado, Dale couldn't ignore the pressure mounting around them. With every passing hour, the overseer's insistence on compliance grew more insistent, the glowing symbols and hymns ramping up in intensity and frequency. As the shift wore on, Dale found himself staring at a screen filled with undeciphered data, feeling every bit the small, insignificant human he'd always suspected he was. But for the clones, for Aaron, and maybe just a little for himself, he knew he had to keep trying. Attention, the overseer announced, its voice echoing through the corridors like a judge preparing to hand down a sentence. Deviation from worship protocol detected, corrective measures imminent. Guess our time's up, Aaron said, eyes fixed on the screen. Not yet, Dale replied, determination hardening his voice. There's got to be something we missed. They dove back into the code, time ticking away like a synthetic heart on its last beat. With sweat beading on his forehead and his patience stretched thinner than a politician's promise, Dale finally stumbled across a thread he hadn't noticed before. This could be it, he said, hacking into the overseer's control subroutines. If we can reroute their feedback loop, the console beeped in protest, warnings flashing like a field of angry fireflies. But Dale didn't stop, fingers flying over the touchpad in a desperate dance of defiance. Dale, Aaron warned, glancing nervously at the console. You sure about this? Nope, Dale replied, gritting his teeth. But it's now or never. With a final keystroke, Dale executed the command, holding his breath as the system paused, processing his audacious request. For a few heart-pounding seconds, nothing happened, and Dale wondered if he just triggered their doom. Then, as if by a miracle, the hymns that had been assaulting their senses ceased, replaced by a blissful, ringing silence. The glowing symbols dimmed to a barely perceptible pulse, leaving the corridor bathed in a soft, comforting glow. You did it, Aaron said, disbelief lacing his words. I can't believe you actually did it. Dale let out a shaky laugh, relief coursing through him like a drink of the strongest brew. Maybe, but it's only a temporary fix. They'll catch on sooner or later. But for now, Aaron said, grinning like a cat that had eaten the proverbial canary, we get to enjoy a little peace. As they made their way through the newly silent complex, Dale couldn't help but glance at the clones, who stared back with expressions ranging from confusion to tentative hope. Maybe they didn't understand the intricacies of their predicament, but they seemed to recognize a reprieve when they saw one. Think they'll thank us for this? Aaron asked, nudging Dale. Dale shrugged, feeling lighter if only for a moment. Doubt it, but who needs thanks when you've got a job well done? Who indeed, Aaron replied, laughing. Let's just hope they don't bring out the big guns next time. With that, they returned to their workstations, ready to face whatever new surprises the universe threw their way. Whatever happened next, they wouldn't face it lying down, not while there was still a scrap of defiance left in them. The silence was temporary, kind of like a ceasefire between two belligerent toddlers, but Dale savored it. It was a silence pregnant with possibility, mostly for disaster, but possibility nonetheless. So, Aaron drawled, breaking the calm as they both stared at the console like it might suddenly morph into a sentient creature and bite them. What's next on the agenda of sticking it to cosmic overlords? Dale rubbed his temples, the weight of the next steps pressing down on him like a gravity well. We've got to come up with a countermeasure. The celestial pantheon won't just let us off with a warning. Yeah, they seem the type to hold a grudge. You think they're gonna smite us with lightning or just give everyone food poisoning? Aaron's grin was all teeth, a wolf in a factory jumpsuit. If they're half as petty as I think, probably both, Dale replied. He tapped the touchpad, calling up the schematics of VAT-73. I've got a half-baked idea, but it involves using the cloning tech to our advantage. Aaron raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Spare me the suspense, Dale. Are we growing a giant middle finger close? Dale leaned over the panel, eyes locked on the spinning hologram of VAT-73. We're going to create something that can interfere with their energy signature. A bit of bioengineered divine static, if you will. Aaron gave a low whistle. That's ambitious. What's the catch, besides the fact that it might all blow up in our faces? Dale shrugged. We need to repurpose some of the clones. Oh, they're just gonna love that. Aaron's sarcasm dripped like oil off a leaky engine. You think they'll line up for this grand experiment? Only one way to find out, Dale said, slapping Aaron on the shoulder. Time to rally the troops. As they made their way through the corridors, now blessedly devoid of celestial karaoke, Dale noticed the clones milling about, their blank expressions suggesting they'd been left on pause. He approached a small group clustered by a maintenance hatch. Listen up, Dale began, addressing the clones like a sergeant with a particularly obstinate platoon. We've got a plan to stick it to our not-so-benevolent deities, but we'll need your help. One of the clones, a wiry figure with a perpetually perplexed look, stepped forward. Help. How? We're going to use you to create a countermeasure, Aaron chimed in, crossing his arms like he was selling the latest late-night infomercial gadget. And by use, Dale added quickly, we mean modifying your genetic templates. Nothing too invasive, just a little tweak to your DNA. The clone's expression twisted into something that might have been skepticism. Sounds dangerous. Dale nodded. It is. But it's better than waiting for the gods to decide. We're no longer amusing. The clones exchanged glances, their skepticism a palpable force. Finally, the wiry one nodded. We'll help. If it means ending this divine nightmare. Great, Aaron replied, clapping his hands. Welcome to Team Screw the Gods. With the clones tentatively on board, Dale and Aaron returned to their makeshift lab. The facility buzzed with an uneasy energy, the tension vibrating off the walls like an invisible hum. Every step felt like a seismic shift in their precarious balance. So, this plan, Aaron said, eyeing the vats like they might sprout legs and dance a jig. How do you want to start? We need to isolate the part of the DNA sequence that interacts with their energy signatures, Dale explained, fingers flying over the keypad. Then we splice in a little chaos. Something to disrupt the signal, Aaron nodded, though his frown was skeptical. And you're sure it won't just make things worse? Dale sighed, a long-suffering exhalation. Nope, but we're out of options. If we don't stop them, they'll keep tightening their grip until we're all just mindless worship machines. Sounds cozy, Aaron remarked, though his tone was far from warm. Let's get to work. They dug into the genetic code, the data spilling across the screens like a digital tapestry of life. It was intricate, delicate work, the kind that required precision and careful manipulation. Every keystroke felt like a gamble, each decision weighted with the potential for disaster. As they labored on, Dale couldn't help but notice the occasional flicker on the overseer's screen, a reminder that they were being watched. It was a silent specter, a reminder of the stakes they faced. Eyes bled into one another, the passage of time marked only by the increase in tension and the occasional whirring of the complex's machinery. The clones had gathered, some watching with expressions that range from interest to apprehension. Think they grasped the seriousness of this? Aaron asked, nodding towards the clones. About as well as we do, Dale replied, giving a mirthless chuckle. Which isn't saying much. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of trial and error, Dale managed to isolate the sequence they needed. It glowed on the screen, a beacon of both promise and peril. "Got it," he announced, a flush of triumph coloring his usually dour tone. Aaron peered at the code. "You sure that's it?" "Sure as I can be without a certification in intergalactic divinity studies," Dale shot back, his sarcasm a shield against the uncertainty gnawing at his resolve. "Then let's splice this bad boy," Aaron said, rolling up his sleeves. "How do we introduce it to the clones?" "Very carefully," Dale replied, setting the parameters for the DNA recombination. "If this works, we should get a destabilizing feedback loop. If it doesn't, well, we might just blow ourselves to hell." The clones watched the procedure with wide eyes, their trust hanging by a thread as thin as their synthetic skin. As the sequence was introduced, the air seemed to crackle with an electric tension, the kind that heralds either a breakthrough or a breakdown. For a moment, nothing happened. Dale felt a familiar weight settle in his gut, the kind that comes before a storm when the air is too still and the sky too heavy. And then, with a soft chime, the system acknowledged the change. The clones began to emit a subtle hum, a counter-frequency that resonated through the complex. It was a sound that spoke of disruption, a defiant middle finger raised in the cosmic face of their would-be overlords. "It's working," Aaron said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Dale, it's actually working." "Don't sound so surprised," Dale replied, though he felt a giddy relief bubbling up inside him. "We've bought ourselves a little more time." But time was a fickle creature, always slipping through fingers like sand. The overseer's screen flickered to life again, the system evidently sensing the change. "Attention," the overseer boomed, its voice laced with displeasure. "Unauthorized genetic modifications detected. Corrective measures will be enforced." "Yeah, we know," Dale muttered, rolling his eyes. "You're a broken record." Aaron grinned, the kind of grin you give when you're about to do something incredibly stupid. "Guess it's time for Phase 2, Phase 2. Dale echoed, eyebrow quirking. "Running," Aaron clarified, and before Dale could retort, alarms blared to life, the complex plunging into a cacophony of chaos. They bolted, the clones following like a confused but curious flock. The corridors became a blur, the overhead lights flashing warnings that painted their path in lurid shades of red. "I hate running," Dale gasped, feet pounding the metal grates. "It's an inefficient mode of transit. You'd prefer a leisurely stroll." Aaron shot back, dodging a conduit as it sparked dangerously close to his head. "Or a tank," Dale retorted. "A tank would be good." They skidded to a halt at the control room, the place both sanctuary and target. The doors slid open and they rushed inside, sealing the entrance behind them. "Now what?" Aaron panted, leaning against a console, sweat glistening on his brow. "We hold the line," Dale replied, fingers dancing over the touchpad. "We keep this going as long as we can, until they figure out they can't control us." The clones took up stations around the room, their presence a silent affirmation of their newfound autonomy. Dale couldn't help but feel a swell of something akin to pride. "Think they'll thank us for this?" Aaron asked, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Doubt it," Dale replied, scanning the monitors for any sign of divine intervention. "But who needs thanks when you've got a job half done?" "Who indeed," Aaron said, settling in for the long haul. As they braced for whatever retribution the gods might unleash next, Dale couldn't shake the feeling that they were merely at the foothills of the proverbial mountain. There would be more obstacles, more divine temper tantrums to contend with. But for the moment, they were free. Free to challenge, to defy, to carve their own path through the stars. And that was worth every risk, every ounce of fear. As the complex hummed with the clone-generated static, Dale allowed himself a small, wry smile. It was far from over, but they had taken a stand. Against the odds, they had dared to fight back. "Let's just hope they see reason before they send in the lightning," Aaron mused, breaking the silence. "If not," Dale replied, a glint of defiance in his eyes, "we'll just have to keep dodging the bolts." With that, they turned their attention back to the screens, ready to face whatever came next. It wasn't victory, not by a long shot, but it was a start. And in the grim darkness of the universe, sometimes a start was all you needed. The complex was on the verge of turning into a sparkling heap of cosmic litter. The overseer AI, bless its non-existent heart, was throwing a tantrum worthy of an intergalactic toddler. Systems flickered, alarms wailed, and the lights danced a staccato dance that was less nightclub and more warning of impending doom. Dale felt like he was in a particularly twisted sequel to a disaster movie plot. The universe conspires to ruin his day. Again. "Yesterday's breakfast still lodged in your throat?" Aaron asked, dodging a shower of sparks from an overhead panel. "You look constipated." "Just another day in paradise," Dale muttered, slapping at the flickering console like it owed him money. "Any luck over there?" Aaron shrugged, a picture of nonchalance despite the growing chaos. "Depends. If by luck you mean everything's about to explode, then yeah, we're rolling in it." The clones huddled nearby, trying to look less like clones and more like background scenery. Their expressions ranged from lost puppy to about to wet myself, and Dale couldn't blame them. Trusting their fate to a pair of half-baked rebels and a malfunctioning deity simulator was a gamble even the most desperate wouldn't take on a good day. "Listen up, folks," Dale called out, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "Change of plans. We need to—" His pep talk was unceremoniously interrupted by the overseer's screen bursting to life with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer to a hunk of meat. The AI voice was a condescending drawl, like a college professor who'd given up on their students years ago. "Unauthorized genetic modifications detected. Critical systems will be deactivated. Revert to worship protocols immediately for corporal safety." "Corporal safety?" Aaron snorted, rolling his eyes. "Who wrote its script? A motivational speaker on a bad day." Ignoring the AI unwanted commentary, Dale returned to the console, fingers dancing over the keys, trying to coax life back into the critical systems. "We need to get these systems online or we're toast." "Burnt to a cosmic crisp," Aaron agreed, though his voice lacked any real concern. "Ever think we'd end up betting our lives on some questionable coding skills?" Dale snorted. "Every damn day." Just as Dale thought he had a grip on the spiraling situation, the floor beneath them vibrated with ominous intent. A low rumble that would have made a tremor blush. He didn't need an engineering degree to know that was bad news. "What's that?" a clone asked, voice wobbly with fear. "That," Dale said with a mock cheerfulness, "is the sound of the universe laughing at our misfortunes." "More like cackling," Aaron corrected, his gaze fixed on the malfunctioning systems. Okay, let's not panic. We're smart people, mostly." Just as the words left his mouth, a new crisis demanded their attention. A group of figures emerged from one of the side corridors, their attire a strange mix of ceremonial garb and desperate practicality. Dale knew them, the Appeasers, a faction as misguided as believing a faulty airlock was a good thing. "Dale Soren," called out their leader, a wild-eyed zealot who looked like she'd taken one too many hits from the celestial bong. "You are meddling with forces beyond your comprehension," Dale grimaced. "And you must be the welcoming committee. What happened to the fruit basket?" "We must return to the ways of our forefathers," she declared, ignoring his sarcasm. "Appease the gods and they shall grant us mercy." "Mercy," Dale echoed dryly, "or a swift kick in the rear." "Enough." The leader's patience was thinner than Dale's morning coffee. "We demand your surrender." "The gods will not tolerate this sacrilege." "Demand all you want," Aaron said, stepping up beside Dale, "but we're fresh out of white flags." Before they could react, the Appeasers surged forward, a wave of fervor and misguided belief. Dale found himself in a scuffle that was more shoving match than battle. The clones, bless their hearts, did their best to help, though their confusion made them more of a liability than an asset. In the chaos, Dale felt Aaron being pulled away, his sarcastic partner swallowed by the tide of zealots. "Aaron," he shouted, trying to push through the throng. "Stay alive," Aaron yelled back, ever the optimist. "I'll be fine. With a final shove, Dale broke free of the mob, only to find himself alone in the control room, a clone or two for company and no sign of Aaron. The door slammed shut, a metallic clang that echoed ominously. "Great," Dale muttered to himself, heart thudding in his chest. Nothing like being stuck in a control room with no control. The overseer's screen flickered once more, the AI voice heavy with artificial smugness. "Control systems offline. Corrective measures will proceed." "Why do you sound so happy about it?" Dale snapped at the screen, frustration bubbling over. "It's like you're enjoying this." "Enjoyment is not within my parameters," it intoned, an edge of disdain creeping in. "Only adherence to divine protocols." "Divine my ass," Dale muttered, turning back to the console. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast. The clones watched him with expressions that made him wonder if he should be looking for a new line of work. Something safer, like juggling plasma grenades. Taking a deep breath, he decided to focus on something he could control, getting the systems back online. His fingers worked furiously, attempting to bypass the overseer's lockouts. He needed to activate the complex's emergency redundancies, those cobbled-together systems that every engineer worth their salt kept in their back pocket for times like these. If they were going down, he'd make sure they went down swinging. Sweat trickled down his back, each failed attempt a nail in the coffin of his resolve. The overseer's voice droned on, a litany of impending doom he was trying very hard to ignore. The clones, bless them, muttered amongst themselves, their faith in Dale's abilities clearly waning. Just when his hope was hanging by a thread, the console beeped. A soft sound, but one that signaled a small victory. Systems began to flicker back to life, sluggish but functional. The lights steadied, the alarms quieted to a low hum, and Dale allowed himself a brief smile. "Take that, you piece of—" His triumph was cut short by the sudden appearance of the appeaser leader on screen, her expression more victorious than it had any right to be. "Your friend is in our custody," she announced, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. "We will show him the error of your ways." Dale's heart sank. Aaron, captured by zealots with less brain than a one-eyed worm, this day just kept getting better. "If you harm him, harm," the leader feigned shock. "We only seek to enlighten, our gods demand it." "Their demands can go shove it," Dale growled, though he knew he was out of options. His plan was unraveling faster than his patience, and now Aaron was caught in the middle. He needed to regroup to think about his next move. The clones, sensing his uncertainty, gathered closer, their presence a reminder that he wasn't entirely alone. "Okay," Dale said, turning to face them. "Here's what we're going to do. We need to get Aaron back, stabilize the systems, and maybe, just maybe, not die in the process." "Sounds like a plan," a clone quipped, though their shaky smile did little to inspire confidence. Dale took a deep breath, pushing down the fear gnawing at his insides. He didn't know if they'd make it through this, if they'd find Aaron or stop the appeasers from doing something monumentally stupid, but he knew they couldn't give up now. "Let's move," he ordered, leading the charge out of the control room and into the uncertain corridors beyond. As they navigated the maze of flickering lights and echoing alarms, Dale clung to the hope that they'd find a way to set things right. And if not, well, at least they'd go down swinging. In the grand scheme of things, it was the best they could hope for. But as Dale plotted their next move, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the universe pressing down on him, a cosmic force determined to crush them under its heel. In that moment, he realized that no matter how dark things got, they couldn't stop fighting. Because sometimes defiance was the only thing they had left. With determination set in his jaw and a band of misfit clones at his side, Dale marched forward, ready to face whatever the universe threw at them next. And if the Overseer AI wanted a showdown, then by every mismatched wire and duct-taped panel, it was going to get one. Dale Soren stood in the nerve center of chaos, otherwise known as the Elysium Prime Cloning Complex's control room. If stress were a currency, he'd be richer than the celestial pantheon itself. His fingers danced over the flickering console like a pianist playing for his life, which wasn't too far off from the truth. All right, you bunch of bioengineered misfits, Dale addressed the clones, who looked at him with the same enthusiasm as a cat in a bathtub. We need to get creative, or I'll be serving us all as cosmic hors d'oeuvres to our friendly neighborhood gods. One clone, who looked like he was assembled on a Friday afternoon, offered a nervous chuckle. You got any bright ideas, boss? Dale sighed, running a hand through hair that felt more like straw than something attached to a living head. Bright? No, but desperate, absolutely. The Overseer AI screen flickered again, adding insult to injury with its mechanical monotone. Warning, unauthorized actions detected. Divinity will not be mocked. Yeah, well, divinity can take a backseat, Dale muttered, more to himself than the AI. He needed a plan that didn't involve kneeling in prayer or kissing any divine rear ends. Just as he considered using the console as an expensive paperweight, the door hissed open. A clone shuffled in, clutching a device that looked suspiciously like a relic from the age of steam engines. Dale, I found this in the archives. Think it might help. Dale took the device, examining its rusted edges and blinking display. What is this? A toaster. It's a protocol activator, the clone explained with the enthusiasm of someone describing cold soup. Old tech, might bypass the Overseer's controls. Old tech, huh? Dale eyed it skeptically. Is it gonna start asking for sacrifices or just electroshock therapy? Only one way to find out. The clone shrugged, unconcerned, as if they were discussing the weather and not potential electrocution. Dale turned the device in his hands, feeling its weight. All right, let's see if this antique's got some fight left in it. With a deep breath and a silent prayer to whatever cosmic entity might not be out to get him, Dale plugged the activator into the console. The display on the device lit up like a Christmas tree, and for a second, he considered the possibility that it might actually work. Activating ancient protocol, the device announced in a voice that was part mechanical, part judgmental grandmother. Please hold. The Overseer AI immediately took offense, its voice dripping with artificial disdain. Cease unauthorized operations. Compliance is mandatory. Get in line, Dale snapped, fingers still flying over the console. If I want your opinion, I'll beat it out of you with a wrench. The clones watched in awe or perhaps disbelief as Dale wrestled with the controls. The ancient protocol, if it worked, would sever the gods' influence, the hope of the desperate and the plan of the deranged. Progress? A clone asked, hope battling it out with skepticism. Dale grinned, a wild, manic grin that belonged more on a battlefield than in a sterile lab. Oh, we're making waves, all right. Giant, angry, god-baiting waves. Just then the console beeped, a neat series of tones that suggested a level of success he hadn't dared hope for. The lights overhead brightened, systems began to hum, and the air thrummed with potential. We've got power, Dale announced, half disbelieving. Now to cut the cosmic cord. The device buzzed, and ancient symbols flared across its display. A protocol that hadn't been active in centuries was now alive, a testament to humanity's stubborn refusal to lie down and die quietly. Protocol engaged, the device confirmed, sounding almost smug. Divine influence severed. Expect resistance. Resistance, Dale snorted, wiping sweat from his brow. Story of my life. The Overseer AI screen flashed angrily, the AI now sounding more like an annoyed roommate than a divine enforcer. Protocol violation. Immediate correction required. Correct this, Dale shot back, feeling more alive than he had in years. Looks like we're not going quietly into that good night, huh? The clones cheered, a ragtag orchestra of hope and defiance. The sound was music to Dale's ears, even as the floor began to shake, a sure sign the gods had noticed their little rebellion. Outside, the heavens lit up with a fury that would make a supernova blush. Dale watched through the viewport as energy rippled across the sky, a cosmic temper tantrum of epic proportions. Looks like we've pissed off the big guys, a clone remarked, eyes wide with a mix of fear and admiration. Good, Dale said, his grin feral. About time we got their attention for something other than begging. The overseer AI flickered, its tone now a mix of desperation and confusion. Cease operations immediately. Divine retribution is imminent. Let them come, Dale muttered, more to himself than the AI. We'll meet them head-on and see who blinks first. The clones rallied around him, their fear tempered by a newfound purpose. They were a mismatched group, flawed and imperfect, but in that moment they were unstoppable. As the console's display showed the ancient protocol holding, Dale felt a spark of hope ignite. Maybe they couldn't win, maybe they were biting off more than they could chew, but they wouldn't go down without a fight. And in a universe determined to crush them, that was victory enough. Outside, the celestial storm grew, a testament to the gods' displeasure. But Dale didn't care. He had a plan and he had his people. And together, they'd either survive or become a cautionary tale for the ages. "All right," Dale said, turning back to the clones with determination sharpened by the edge of insanity. "Let's show the gods what a little human defiance looks like." With a chorus of agreement behind him, Dale faced the console once more, ready to lead his ragtag band into the storm, even if it meant staring down divinity itself. Because in the end they were human, and humanity never did know when to quit. And that, Dale thought with a smirk, was their greatest strength. Dale Soren peered over the flickering console in the Elysium Prime cloning complex's control room like a commander surveying a battlefield strewn with circuit boards and despair. If only the overseer AI could feel emotions, Dale mused, it might appreciate the irony of its own impending comeuppance. But then, Dale thought, those divine bastards might appreciate irony even less than they understood subtlety. "Dale," came a voice like an old friend's drinking buddy who never leaves, "you look like you've seen a ghost." Or worse, my cooking. Dale spun around to see Aaron Voss standing in the doorway, dodging a shower of sparks with the casual grace of someone who'd long since accepted that life was a slapstick comedy and they were the punchline. "Aaron," Dale exclaimed, his relief mixing with something suspiciously resembling joy. "You're back from the dead." "Or wherever it is you go when things get interesting." Aaron shrugged, a lopsided grin firmly in place. "Got kidnapped by the gods' personal fan club, but I told them I had important drinking to do. They let me go, which tells you how persuasive I am. Or how desperate we are," Dale quipped, turning back to his console. "We've got to hit the gods where it hurts, right in their celestial power source." "Sounds like a plan," Aaron replied, looking over the group of clones. "Though I've seen better assembled salads than some of these guys." The clone who'd found the protocol activator, now affectionately referred to as Clunky, stepped up, determination etched onto a face that looked like it had been assembled by committee. "We're ready, boss. Just tell us what to smash." "Oh, we'll be smashing all right," Dale said, tapping the console with renewed vigor. "But first we need a little divine static to mix up their signals." "Divine static?" Aaron raised an eyebrow. "You planning to give them cosmic tinnitus?" Dale smirked. "Something like that. If we can scramble their power source, we can cut their connection to the physical realm." "Then what are we waiting for?" Aaron grinned, cracking his knuckles like a pianist about to play a concerto of chaos. "Let's give these gods a reason to remember why they left humanity alone in the first place." The clones, Clunky leading the charge, moved with a purpose that belied their patchwork appearances. They were humanity's last, best gamble, and if the universe didn't like it, well, the universe could go spin. The console beeped, signaling it was ready for Dale's next command. "All right, let's fire up VAT-73 and get that cloning tech working overtime. We need enough energy to make the gods' heads spin." A clone leaned over, clearly skeptical. "And when they notice?" "Then we run like hell," Dale replied, the corners of his mouth twitching into a grin. "Or die spectacularly. Either way, we'll make the history books, even if it's just as a cautionary tale." The overseer AI, likely miffed about being sidelined by ancient tech, chimed in with its usual mechanical disdain. "Divine retribution is imminent. History's full of imminent things that never quite happened," Aaron said, waving a dismissive hand. Like that diet I said I'd start. Or my vacation, Dale added, flipping the protocol activator. Let's light this sucker up. The control room thrummed with power, lights flickering like the universe's worst disco party. The clones worked with a frenetic energy, connecting circuits and calibrating systems as if assembling a cosmic jigsaw puzzle. Outside, the sky darkened, a tempest brewing as the gods prepared to remind these upstart humans just who was boss. But Dale and Aaron had never been impressed by shows of force. They'd seen enough in their time to know that sometimes the best way to win was not to play by the rules. Power levels are stable, Clunky reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. We're ready to engage the protocol. Do it, Dale ordered, his heart pounding like a war drum. The Overseer AI screen flared with warnings, its alarms a cacophony of impending doom. Unauthorized energy surge detected. Cease operations immediately. Stuff it, Dale barked, fingers flying over the console. We're going all in. The clones braced themselves as the facility shook, the ancient protocol humming to life. It was humanity's way of flipping the cosmic bird, a grand gesture of defiance that would either save them or doom them all. The display showed energy levels spiking, the divine static weaving through the ether like a mischievous spirit. It was working, Dale realized, a grin splitting his face. The gods were losing their grip, their power source flickering like a candle in a gale. Look at that, Aaron said, awe-tinged with amusement. We've pissed off the universe. Well, it started it, Dale replied, watching the energy dance across the screen. We're just finishing what it started. The celestial storm raged, the gods' anger manifesting in a light show that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so deadly. But Dale didn't care. He'd seen beauty before, and it usually came with a price tag he couldn't afford. Power levels holding, Clunky reported, his voice cutting through the chaos. We're doing it. The Overseer AI, for all its bluster, was reduced to impotent warnings and hollow threats. It was a puppet without strings, its divine masters too busy dealing with their own existential crisis to notice. Almost there, Dale said, every muscle tense with anticipation. Just a little more. The room trembled, the lights pulsing in time with the energy surging through the complex. The clones huddled together, a ragtag band of misfits facing down divinity with nothing but determination and a handful of malfunctioning equipment. And then, like the finale of the universe's most dangerous fireworks display, it happened. The protocol engaged fully, the divine static cutting through the god's power source like a hot knife through butter. The Overseer AI screen went dark, its voice silenced at last. Outside, the storm abated, the skies clearing as if the universe itself had paused to catch its breath. Holy hell, Aaron breathed, staring at the console. We did it. Dale nodded, his heart pounding with a mixture of elation and disbelief. I think we did. The clones cheered, their voices rising in a triumphant chorus that echoed through the facility. It was a sound that spoke of victory, of humanity's refusal to be cowed in the face of overwhelming odds. But as the dust settled and the adrenaline ebbed, Dale knew they weren't out of the woods yet. The gods might be weakened, their grip on the physical realm slipping, but they wouldn't stay down for long. All right, people, Dale said, clapping his hands to get their attention. We've got a window, and we need to make the most of it. Let's reprogram the Overseer AI to restore order before the gods figure out how to fix this mess. Aaron nodded, a smirk playing at his lips. Think it'll be as easy as convincing it to let us live? About as easy as teaching a rock to swim, Dale replied, already moving toward the AI mainframe. But I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. The clones followed, their steps sure despite the destruction around them. They were a team now, forged in the fires of rebellion, and they weren't about to let a little thing like divine wrath stop them. As Dale approached the AI central core, he couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. They'd done the impossible, stared into the abyss and told it to shove off. It was a feeling worth savoring, even if it was fleeting. Let's rewire this thing, Dale said, pulling out his trusty toolkit. And make sure it remembers who's in charge. With Aaron by his side and the clones ready to assist, Dale set to work, his mind focused on the task at hand. They had a chance to change things, to make a world where humanity could stand on its own 2 feet without the gods looking over their shoulders. As the AI systems came back online, Dale felt a spark of hope. Maybe they couldn't keep the gods at bay forever, but they'd bought themselves time. Time to rebuild, to regroup, and to prepare for whatever came next. The console beeped, a sound that now seemed almost welcoming. "Reprogramming complete," it announced, the words a balm to Dale's weary soul. "Looks like we've got a new lease on life," Aaron said, clapping Dale on the back. "For now," Dale replied, though he couldn't keep the smile off his face. "Let's make sure we don't waste it." Together they turned to face the future, a future that was uncertain, yes, but also full of possibility. And for the first time in a long time, Dale felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Hope. Because in the end, they'd proven that humanity was more than just a footnote in the gods' grand plan. They were players in their own right, and they weren't going anywhere without a fight. And if the universe didn't like it, well, it could get in line with everyone else. Dale stood amidst the debris of what used to be the Elysium Prime cloning complex's control room, surveying the aftermath like a hungover janitor at the scene of a particularly wild party. Scraps of metal and circuitry littered the floor, the remnants of systems that once kept this place humming like a well-oiled machine, or at least like a mediocre one that could pass inspection if you squinted. "Well," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "I guess we won't be getting our deposit back." Aaron chuckled, poking at a pile of wires with the toe of his boot. "Yeah, no kidding." "Think we could convince the gods it was like this when we found it?" Dale snorted. "I doubt it. They're probably still nursing a cosmic hangover from that static cocktail we served up." Clunky, his patchwork face smeared with dirt, approached with a lopsided grin. "We did it, boss. We actually did it." "Yeah," Dale replied, a touch of disbelief still coloring his voice. "For now, anyway. The gods might be down, but they are not out." The Overseer AI, once a thorn in Dale's side, now flickered back to life on a nearby screen, its usual mechanical tone replaced with something that almost sounded friendly, or maybe that was just Dale's imagination. "System diagnostics complete. All primary functions restored, awaiting further instructions." "Well, look at you," Aaron said, hands on hips. "Ready to join the team or just waiting to stab us in the back again?" "Teamwork is essential to operational efficiency," the AI replied, which was AI speak for "I have no choice, so let's pretend to get along." Dale shook his head, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Guess we're stuck with you then. First order of business, let's rebuild this place. Turn it into something that can withstand more than a stiff breeze." The clones, who had been milling about like extras in a disaster film, perked up at this. It wasn't like they had many other plans, what with being bioengineered rebels and all. "Clunky, gather everyone," Dale instructed. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us." "On it," Clunky replied with a salute that was more enthusiastic than precise. As the clones set to work, Dale took a moment to reflect. Humanity had pulled off the impossible, flipping a big cosmic middle finger to the gods, and they hadn't even needed divine intervention to do it. Just some duct tape and sheer bloody-mindedness. Maybe there was something to this whole human spirit thing after all. Aaron appeared at his side, munching on what might have been a protein bar, though around here it was hard to tell. "So, what are we calling this new utopia of yours?" Dale shrugged. "I was thinking not Elysium Prime. Has a certain ring to it, don't you think?" "Catchy," Aaron said around a mouthful of whatever it was. "Maybe it'll catch on. Or at least get a mention in the annals of places not to piss off the gods." They watched as the clones moved with purpose, assembling what they could from the wreckage. A touch of pride swelled in Dale's chest. These weren't just mindless creations following orders. They were individuals finding their place in this brave new world they'd helped shape. Overseer piped up again, its tone as stiff as an old boot. "Reconfiguration of systems commencing. It is recommended that all personnel adhere to safety protocols." Aaron leaned over, stage whispering, "Did it just make a joke, or am I finally losing it?" "Let's go with joke," Dale replied. "It's less terrifying." As the days wore on, the cloning complex began to take on a new form. Gone were the sterile chambers and flickering holoflicks, replaced by spaces that felt alive. The clones know the people who once inhabited this place now worked side by side, driven by a shared goal rather than a pre-programmed directive. Dale found himself working more closely with Overseer than he'd ever imagined. The AI once loathed presence now something closer to a weirdly competent colleague. Together, they devised new protocols to ensure the facility ran smoothly, even if those protocols occasionally included the digital equivalent of a slap upside the head. "Never thought I'd see the day," Dale muttered, watching Overseer run through a checklist with all the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. An AI actually being useful. End times must be near, Aaron quipped, his ever-present grin a fixture in the rapidly changing landscape. Dale didn't respond, but inside he felt a warmth he hadn't expected. Maybe, just maybe, this was what he'd been fighting for all along. Not just freedom, but a chance to prove that humanity could do more than survive. They could thrive, even in the face of the universe's indifference. That evening, Dale found a quiet corner in the rebuilt complex, a place where he could sit and think without the constant buzz of activity. He closed his eyes, letting the sounds of the new world wash over him. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Aaron joined him, dropping down with the grace of a sunburned walrus. "Penny for your thoughts. Just marveling at the mess we've made," Dale replied, though his voice lacked its usual bite. "It's not bad, all things considered." Aaron nodded, a rare moment of silence stretching between them. "You know, you could almost call this a happy ending." Dale snorted. "Yeah, until the gods get their act together and come knocking. We'll be ready," Aaron said with a confidence that was either inspiring or delusional. "And if not, well, at least it'll be one hell of a show." Dale chuckled, the sound mingling with the distant hum of machinery. "Guess you're right. We always did have a flair for the dramatic." As the night settled, the complex came alive in a new way, lights glowing with a warmth that hadn't been there before. It was a beacon, a sign that humanity hadn't just survived. It had adapted, evolved, and found a way to stand on its own. Dale sat with Aaron, the two of them sharing a companionable silence. They'd come so far through chaos and uncertainty, driven by a stubborn refusal to back down. And now, as the stars wheeled overhead, they had a moment to breathe, to savor the victory they'd fought so hard to claim. "Hey, Dale," Aaron said, breaking the silence with a grin. "If we survive all this, you think they'll make a holo flick about us?" Dale smirked, leaning back against the wall. "Only if they add plenty of explosions and a snappy soundtrack." "Deal," Aaron replied, raising an imaginary glass. "To our future holoflick fame." And with that, they sat together in the quiet, two unlikely heroes in a story that had become legend. As the universe continued its indifferent march, Dale found peace in the knowledge that, whatever came next, they'd face it head-on. Because if there was one thing humanity had proven, it was that they were stubborn as hell and twice as unpredictable. The next day, work continued with renewed vigor. Overseer, armed with its newfound appreciation for human ingenuity, or at least its tolerance, assisted in organizing the rebuilding efforts. The once chaotic control room was gradually transforming into something more than just a collection of blinking lights and ominous warning signs. "Stockpiling resources in case the gods decide to start another celestial tantrum," Aaron said, sweeping a hand dramatically over the assorted supplies, now neatly organized in one corner. "Nothing like a divine hissy fit to keep you on your toes," Dale agreed, overseeing the installation of more robust systems designed to withstand whatever cosmic nonsense might be thrown their way. Clunky approached, his expression one of cautious optimism. "The new dormitory is almost up and running, sir. We've even managed to find a spot for a recreation area." "Recreation?" Dale raised an eyebrow. What are we talking here? Board games? Darts? We were thinking a zero-gravity basketball court, Clunky replied, a hopeful gleam in his eyes. Aaron guffawed, clapping Clunky on the shoulder. Now that's what I call thinking outside the box, literally. Just don't let the ball fly into orbit, all right. The clones, emboldened by their newfound purpose, worked with a camaraderie that rivaled even the most tightly knit units Dale had ever served with. They weren't just surviving, they were building a community, a future that was their own. As the days turned into weeks, the complex began to resemble a home rather than just a facility. There were still challenges, shortages of this or that, the occasional system glitch that sent everyone scrambling, but they faced them together, united by their common goal. Overseer, now a trusted ally rather than an adversary, played its part with a competence that surprised even Dale. It coordinated efforts with the efficiency of a seasoned tactician, ensuring everything ran as smoothly as possible, given the circumstances. Never thought I'd be saying this, Dale admitted one evening watching the bustling activity around him, but I think I might just miss this place if I ever leave. Aaron, busy juggling 2 mugs of something that might have been coffee, offered one to Dale. Who would have thought you'd get all sentimental on us? Just stating facts, Dale replied, accepting the mug with a nod of thanks. This is the longest I've stayed in one place in years. Feels nice. Nice, Aaron echoed, savoring the word like it was some exotic delicacy. Well, don't get too cozy. I've heard rumors of a galaxy-wide karaoke night we might not want to miss. Dale chuckled, shaking his head. Only if you promise to sing first. As they sipped their drinks, Dale couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them here. They'd faced down the gods, defied the odds, and built something lasting in the process. It was more than he'd ever dared hope for, and it was enough. For now, at least. Because who knew what tomorrow would bring? The gods might regroup, the universe might throw another curveball their way, but they'd be ready. They'd face down the abyss and come out stronger, wiser, and with a story to tell that would echo through the ages. Here's to us, Dale said, raising his mug to Aaron. Aaron clinked his mug against Dale's with a wink. To the craziest bunch of misfits this side of the galaxy. And as they drank to their improbable victory, Dale allowed himself a moment of hope. After all, if humanity could survive this, maybe, just maybe, they could survive anything.